It is the spiciest thing I have ever experienced in my life. Everybody ate it at the same time in unison, and suddenly you heard nothing but gasping. So I ended up sitting next to a guy named Gary McKechnie, who writes for the Motorcycle Industry Council and did a series of videos and blogs about this trip. And we were sitting there talking about riding, and I didn't know who he was. I only found out all these names and these backstories since I got home. So I didn't know who he was, and we sat there and we started talking about writing. And not to write about what happens, because what happens is boring. We write about what it means, what it feels, the impressions that we get. I mean, there's one thing to sit at a restaurant. There's another thing to sit at a restaurant next to these people and see all this history and listen to these stories. And there's also the contrast with Cannon Ball Baker and his trip across. So, next day, got up so early, Starbucks was closed. That is the only reason the slide is in the show. We rode out to the Cannon Ball Baker gravesite. And again, these people, without a single word, without any planning, we just ride as a unit. We rode up, and you would think that lining the bikes up like that was staged. The first person just pulled his bike up, and 28 bikes just lined up afterwards. When we left, the guy on the furthest end went out, everybody waited, and it was just a staggered formation heading out, as if it had been staged, as if we had practiced it forever. Not a word was spoken about it. We took the obligatory gravestone shot, and at one point there were a couple of people from the East Coast in the ride. I was one of them, but I didn't start the ride. And they said, well, okay, all East Coast guys, get up here and take a picture. And so I went to get up and join them and said, no, you didn't do the whole ride, so not you. Okay, cool. Keith Mashburn, who I'd been riding with that day, was next to me and he said, oh, that's not cool. You're one of us now. You shouldn't be excluded. And I thought, oh, that's really nice. From the gravesite, we went to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There was some rumor that we might be able to ride on the track, but that didn't happen. They opened the Speedway Museum, Hall of Fame for us, and the statistician came out and told stories of races from years gone by. We went inside, and it turns out they have one of the bikes that Cannon Ball Baker rode, because he apparently rode in the first motorcycle race to be held in Indianapolis. And they were telling me that Nicky Hayden came out and rode this bike around the track not too terribly long ago. And everyone was complimentary of how easy Nicky Hayden is to get along with. From there, we went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to the museum, just because it was on the way. And we looked at more history, again, looking backwards. And there's this placard up there. And that got me to thinking, which I will return to later on. From there, we went to the American Motorcycle Association Hall of Fame, which is another museum. It's absolutely beautiful. And again, you stand around, and there are lots of people taking pictures. It turns out that Cannon Ball Baker was inducted to the AMA Hall of Fame, but there was no one there to receive his coin. So the AMA Hall of Fame kept it. A couple of years ago, they loaned it to Don, and he had been carrying it across the country on this route. And we all got to hold the thing and take pictures of it, and he then, in a small ceremony, gave the coin back to the AMA Hall of Fame. And Don says, oh, that's the bike I won on. Turns out Don Emdy is an AMA Hall of Famer, and he has the distinction of being the only family to have, I think it's 3, he's the only father-son pair. His father was also in the AMA Hall of Fame. And I came across this statue, and the only reason that I've included it is I really liked it. It's called First Ride. So we're heading out, and I keep thinking about that quote from Debbie that I had met in Arizona, that there's something about motorcycle people. So we're in a traffic jam, and Bill notices Cooper's saddlebags are open. And before I can even react, he's already up there fastening the bags for him so that he doesn't have to get off. And that was a recurring theme on the trip, because everybody helped everybody out. There's a point where a guy dropped his bike, 2 people were there to help him pick it up. We made a quick stop at a place called KNC Cycles, and they also had a sign up. And it turns out that the owner of KNC Cycles was in Hebron, Ohio. Dick Clamfall was also a Daytona 200 winner. But interestingly enough, Dick knew Cannonball Baker. And Cannonball Baker would stop by his pit on a regular basis. They knew each other. And what I also learned while I was here is that Don's father stood on the podium with Cannonball Baker. I think I have that correct. So the next day, we're getting towards the East Coast, and we're in Ohio. We're going to head into Pennsylvania, and I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable. I walk out into the parking lot. Now, like I said, following Don sometimes can be a little bit challenging, and especially in rush hour traffic. And there were a couple of places where anytime you lead, you're going to make a wrong turn. It always happens. Sometimes you make 2 wrong turns, sometimes 3, and sometimes it adds 30 miles to a trip. Next day, I walk out into the parking lot, and I had been talking the previous evening that I'm from the East Coast. And there's these 2 guys talking to each other over earplugs, saying, "Yermo, yeah, Yermo, let's follow Yermo." Keith Mashburn rolls up, he says, "Yermo, you know where you're going?" I said, "I have the GPS, yeah, I think so." "Okay, I'm just going to follow you all day." So we've been following Don, and so suddenly now I'm leading these guys, and I say, no, guys, they ride fast, I'm slow. So these are racers and whatnot, right? And I don't ride as fast as Don does, and I have a different philosophy. If we ride together, let's ride together as a group. "Oh, no, you go on, we'll catch up or not." And I say, "No, we're not going to have a chance to ride as a group again for a long time. If a tractor trailer cuts us off, you get caught off at a light, I will stop. Let's just ride as a group." Okay. And we went. We rode all day through twisty roads, stopped at the Flight 93 Memorial, where the ranger there, the officer there, had such a depth of history on every story of people on that plane and what happened afterwards and how the memorial was built. And it was really quite touching. And it was one of those things that you wish there could have been a camera. We also went to Gettysburg. My buddy Duncan showed up, joined us there for part of the ride. And I tried as best as I could to snap a picture of all of us while we were riding. And we showed up after getting through nice countryside. We got into traffic, things got really hot. And thankfully, when we showed up at the hotel, they had cordoned off parking for us. They told us the police would be monitoring the parking lot. We walked in, they had water and little pins welcoming us. There was one woman in the group, Catherine Long, and she rode a GSXR 750 all the way across country. She's a grandmother, an architect, and a welder, and very cool. So the next morning, I'm walking out of the hotel room. People have heard from conversations the night before that I will never again ride in Manhattan. So help me God. We are riding into Manhattan. So I walk out, and there's a whole bunch of them. And all of a sudden, I hear, "There he is." And they all turn around. "You rode in New York?" I said, "Yeah, you're not worthy. We're going to follow you, Yermo." And okay, fine. So a couple of riders decided to follow me into Manhattan. I had the GPS track that listed out Cannonball Baker's route. It was heavy traffic. Got within like 40 miles, 50 miles of New York City, and suddenly the GPS track failed.